The shuttle bumped through another pocket of turbulence as it descended toward Pyros 3. Riley Foster pressed her face against the window, watching the red surface of the Dragon homeworld grow larger below. Her hands were shaking. They had been shaking for 3 days now, ever since the Council gave her this assignment. You will be the first outsider to enter a Dragon training academy, Ambassador Kaleth had told her in that sterile briefing room. The Zentari diplomat's 6 eyes had blinked in sequence, a sign of serious concern. Do you understand what this means? Riley had nodded, though she barely understood anything at all. She was a xenobiologist. She studied animals and alien creatures from safe distances. She wrote papers and gave lectures. She did not get dropped into ancient warrior cultures where one wrong move could start an interstellar incident. But here she was anyway. The shuttle touched down with a jolt that rattled her teeth. Through the window she could see the Crimson Spire Academy rising from the volcanic rock like a blade thrust into the planet's heart. The fortress was carved directly into the mountain. All sharp angles and fierce design. Smoke curled from vents in the stone. Everything about it screamed discipline, strength, and a complete lack of patience for soft outsiders who studied things instead of fighting them. Riley grabbed her single bag and walked down the ramp. The heat hit her immediately, dry and intense. Pyros 3 orbited close to its sun, and the dragons liked it hot. She was already sweating through her shirt. A figure waited at the base of the ramp. He was massive, even for a dragon. His scales were deep crimson with black edges, scarred in a dozen places. One eye was clouded with old damage. He looked at Riley the way someone might look at a smudge on their boot. Dr. Foster. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am Head Instructor Garrick. You will follow me. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not touch anything. You will not interfere with training in any way. Is this clear? Yes, sir. Riley's voice came out smaller than she wanted. Garrick turned and walked toward the fortress without checking if she followed. Riley hurried after him, her bag bouncing against her hip. They passed through massive doors engraved with dragon warriors in battle poses. The corridors inside were wide and tall, built for creatures with wings and tails. Riley felt like a child in a giant's house. Our cubs train here from age 6 to age 26 in your standard years, Garrick said as they walked. He did not slow down or look back. They are taught combat, strategy, flight, fire breathing, and most importantly, discipline. Emotion is weakness. Attachment is vulnerability. We forge them into weapons for the protection of our people. Riley wanted to ask questions. Her scientist brain was bursting with them. But she remembered the rules and kept quiet. They emerged onto a broad terrace overlooking a vast training yard carved into the mountainside. Below, hundreds of dragon cubs moved through combat drills in perfect formation. They were young, maybe equivalent to 8 or 10 human years old, but they moved with frightening precision. Not one scale out of place, not one voice raised. Just the sound of claws on stone and wings slicing air in synchronized patterns. 300 cubs, Garrick said. Not one has seen their parents in 5 years. Not one will see them for 15 more. This is how we build strength. Riley's chest tightened. She thought of human children that age, torn from their families for decades. It seemed cruel, but she bit her tongue and nodded. Your observation post is there. Garrick pointed to a small platform jutting from the terrace. You will watch from that position. There is a barrier. You will not cross it. You will take notes for your research and submit them to Elder Syra each evening. In 2 weeks you will leave and never return. This is the agreement. I understand. Do you? Garrick's good eye fixed on her. These cubs are our future. They are precious beyond measure. We do not let them be soft. We do not let them be weak. And we do not let aliens corrupt what we have built over 10,000 years. You are here because politics demanded it, not because we want you. Remember that. He left her there on the platform. Riley set down her bag and looked out at the training yard. The cubs had moved into a new formation, practicing aerial maneuvers. They launched into the air in waves, their small wings beating hard. They were beautiful. They were also heartbreaking. She pulled out her data pad and started taking notes, trying to be clinical and detached. Wing structure, formation patterns, training methodology. But she kept noticing other things too. The way some cubs trembled with exhaustion, the way others had eyes that seemed too old for their faces. The absolute silence except for instructors barking orders. Hours passed. The suns moved across the sky, both of them, casting double shadows. The cubs trained without stopping. No water breaks, no rest. Just drill after drill after drill. Finally, a horn sounded. The cubs landed and formed neat rows. An instructor Riley had not seen before walked among them with a water cart. The cubs drank in turn, still maintaining formation, still silent. One small cub near the back wobbled on his feet. He was tiny compared to the others, his scales a lighter shade of red. He reached for his water cup and missed. The cup fell. He bent to pick it up and stumbled, falling sideways, right toward Riley's platform. She moved without thinking. Her hand shot out across the barrier, catching the cub's shoulder before he hit the stone edge. For just a moment their eyes met. His were gold, wide with surprise. Something passed between them, something Riley could not name but felt in her bones. The cub made a sound, not words, just a soft chirp like a bird greeting the dawn. Then every single cub in the training yard turned their head toward Riley. The world seemed to slow down. 300 pairs of eyes locked onto her position. For one frozen heartbeat, nobody moved. Then the chirping started. One cub, then another, then a dozen, then all of them. The sound rose into the air like a wave. And the wave became motion, the formation shattered. 300 dragon cubs broke ranks and stampeded toward Riley's platform. No, Garrick's roar cut across the yard. Maintain formation. Hold position. But the cubs did not stop. They could not stop. They swarmed up the terrace over each other, wings and tails tangling, all trying to reach the human who had caught one of their own. Riley fell backward as they surrounded her, pressing close, making those chirping sounds. Small claws gripped her clothes gently. Scaled faces pressed against her hands. Tears ran down some of their faces. Riley's heart broke and mended and broke again. These were babies. Warriors in training, yes, but also just babies who had not been held in 5 years. She touched them back. She could not help it. Her hands moved over scales and wings, gentle and sure. She made soft sounds, the kind humans make to comfort children, and the cubs pressed closer. Some of them sobbing now, some purring, all of them desperate for this thing they had been denied so long. Get away from her. Instructors were pulling cubs back, restoring order by force. Garrick himself was shouting commands. Slowly, reluctantly, the cubs retreated. They formed their lines again, but their eyes never left Riley. Some were still crying silently. Garrick climbed onto the platform. His face was a mask of fury. You will leave now, gather your things and go. Riley stood on shaking legs. I did not mean to. I do not care what you meant. You have disrupted sacred training. You have made them soft. You have undone years of discipline in moments. You are done here. But even as he spoke, Riley noticed something. The cubs had returned to formation, yes, but they were not standing at attention anymore. They were all turned slightly, bodies angled toward where she stood, and they were still making that soft chirping sound, quieter now but constant, a sound of longing. Take her to her quarters, Garrick told a junior instructor. She leaves at first light. As Riley was led away, she looked back once. 300 pairs of eyes followed her, and somewhere in the back of her mind a thought formed. Something important had just happened. Something that changed everything. She just did not know what yet. Riley sat in her assigned quarters staring at her hands. They still tingled where the cubs had pressed against them. Outside her window she could hear the sounds of the academy settling into evening routines. Claws on stone. Wings folding. The bark of instructor commands. But underneath it all something new. That chirping sound, softer now but persistent. The cubs were singing for her. A knock rattled her door. She opened it expecting Garrick or another instructor come to escort her to the shuttle bay early. Instead, an ancient dragon stood in the corridor. Her scales were so pale they were almost white, covered in intricate patterns that might have been scars or might have been tattoos or might have been both. Her eyes were milky but somehow saw everything. Dr. Foster, I am Elder Sierra. Walk with me. It was not a request. Riley followed the old dragon through corridors she had not seen before, going deeper into the mountain. They passed chambers filled with weapons, libraries carved into living rock, meditation halls where the walls still glowed with residual heat. Finally, they entered a room that seemed older than the rest. The stone here was different, covered in carvings that predated the current dragon writing system. Sit, Syra said, lowering herself onto a cushion designed for dragon proportions. Riley sat across from her on the floor. You know why the cubs reacted to you, Syra said. It was not a question. No, Elder. I do not understand it at all. That is because you are thinking like a scientist. Think like a creature instead. Syra gestured to the walls. These carvings tell our old history. Before the academies, before the discipline. 10,000 years ago, dragons were not warriors. We were clan-bonded, family-focused, deeply emotional. We sang together. We raised our young in groups. We felt everything intensely. Riley studied the carvings. They showed dragons in domestic scenes, nurturing hatchlings entwined in groups. What changed? She asked. War. A war that nearly destroyed our species. We survived only by becoming what we are now. Hard. Disciplined. We built the academies and trained ourselves to suppress emotion because emotion had made us vulnerable. Syra's voice grew heavy. But we paid a price. Our lifespan shortened. Our creativity died. Our young became hollow. We told ourselves it was necessary, that we had no choice. But the cubs today were not hollow when they touched you, Syra finished. They were alive. Truly alive, perhaps for the first time since entering this place. Riley thought about those desperate faces, those tears, that desperate pressing close. Why me? Why did they react to a human? Syra pulled out a tablet showing chemical analyses. Your people emit specific compounds when you nurture. Pheromones, you call them. Ancient dragon biology is programmed to respond to similar compounds. When a dragon parent cares for their young, they produce these same markers. The cubs smelled it on you. Their instincts recognized what their training tried to erase. A caregiver. A safe presence. Home. The pieces clicked together in Riley's mind. You are saying humans and dragons are biologically compatible as family units? Not just compatible, complementary. There are legends in our oldest texts about a kindred species among the stars, a people whose warmth could reach our buried hearts. Most dismissed it as myth. I am beginning to think it was prophecy. Riley stood and paced, her scientist brain churning. If this is true, if the cubs need this kind of connection, then your training system is not just harsh. It is harmful. You are fighting their biology. I know. Syra's voice cracked slightly. I have known for decades. I have watched generations of cubs become shells of what they could be. I have seen too many young dragons die inside while their bodies continue living. But I am one old voice against 10,000 years of tradition. Then why tell me this? Why not just let Garrick send me away? Because of what happened in the training yard. Syra's eyes focused on Riley with sudden intensity. 300 cubs in perfect formation. Years of discipline drilled into them. And all of it shattered the moment they sensed you. Instinct overpowered training. Biology defeated culture. That has never happened before, never. Riley's heart was pounding. What are you asking me? Stay, work with the cubs. Not to replace our training, but to give them what they need to be whole. Teach us how to balance discipline with emotion. Show us that strength and feeling can coexist. Garrick will never allow it. Garrick does not decide alone. The Council of Instructors will meet tonight. I have called for a vote on your presence here, but I need you to come to that meeting. I need you to show them the science. Make them understand what their methods have cost us. Riley thought about those cubs crying silently as they were pulled away from her. She thought about children spending 20 years without their parents, without affection, without anyone telling them they were loved. Her hands curled into fists. I will do it. Whatever you need. 3 hours later, Riley stood in a circular chamber facing 12 dragons seated on raised platforms. Garrick glared at her with undisguised hostility. Others looked merely skeptical. Syra sat among them, her face carefully neutral. Riley activated her portable display and began. She showed them the pheromone analyses, the biological data on dragon cub development, comparison studies between species that suppressed emotion and those that integrated it, statistics on depression, early death, and diminished capacity among recent dragon generations compared to historical baselines. You are killing them, she said bluntly, not with weapons but with isolation. Dragon cubs are biologically programmed to bond. When you prevent that, you damage their neural development. They survive, but they do not thrive. The warriors you produce are technically proficient but emotionally crippled. Emotion is weakness, one instructor growled. It makes them vulnerable. No. Riley pulled up her final data set. Emotion makes them alive. Weakness comes from denying your nature, not embracing it. A warrior who understands their feelings controls them. A warrior who buries their feelings is controlled by them, usually at the worst possible moment. Garrick stood. You have been here one day, and you presume to lecture us about our own species? I presume to lecture you about biology, which is my expertise. You are warriors. I respect that. But you are trying to wage war against nature itself, and nature always wins eventually. The cubs broke formation, another instructor said. They abandoned discipline the moment they saw you. How is that strength? They broke formation because they are starving, Riley said. Starving for touch, for affection, for someone to tell them they matter as individuals and not just as weapons. Feed that need and they will be stronger, not weaker. Deny it and you will break them. The chamber fell silent. The instructors looked at each other. Finally, a younger dragon spoke up. Her name was Wren, and her eyes held a deep sadness. My clutch brother graduated from this academy 3 years ago, she said quietly. He was a perfect warrior, perfect discipline, perfect scores. He killed himself 6 months after graduation. He left a note saying he felt nothing and could not bear the emptiness anymore. She looked at Riley. How many more will we lose before we admit something is wrong? Garrick's face contorted. You would dishonor your brother's memory by... I honor his memory by trying to save others from his fate. Wren's voice cracked. He needed help and we gave him more discipline. He needed connection and we gave him more isolation. We failed him. I will not fail the cubs we have now. The vote was called. It was not unanimous. 4 instructors voted to send Riley away immediately, but 8 voted to let her stay at least for a trial period, 1 month. She could work with the cubs for 1 hour each day. If discipline collapsed, she would be expelled and never allowed to return to any dragon world. Garrick abstained from voting. As Riley left the chamber, he caught her arm. His grip was not gentle. You will fail, he said. You will prove that emotion makes them weak and you will leave in disgrace. I promise you this, Riley met his eyes. I promise you something too. I will prove that your cubs can be both strong and whole. And when I do, you will have to face what your methods have cost them all these years. She returned to her quarters, exhausted but determined. Through her window, she could still hear the cubs. That soft chirping had not stopped. They were singing in their barracks, a sound that had not been heard in the academy for generations. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tomorrow, she would sit with 300 traumatized children and try to help them remember how to feel without falling apart. Tomorrow, she would try to bridge 10,000 years of cultural damage with 1 hour of kindness. It seemed impossible. But she had to try. 3 weeks had passed since the council gave Riley permission to work with the cubs. She sat now in what had become their meeting place, a courtyard open to the sky where the cubs could gather after their regular training. They called it Heart Time, a name one of the smaller cubs had invented. The instructors pretended not to hear it. The cubs sat in a loose circle around her, close enough to touch but maintaining some discipline. It was a compromise they had all learned together. Riley would not disrupt their training formation. They would not mob her the moment she appeared. Slowly, painfully, they were finding a balance. Tell me about the fire trial, Riley said to the small cub pressed against her left side. His name was Pip, and he had been the one who stumbled that first day. He was the smallest cub in his cohort by a significant margin, and it clearly worried him. I am scared, Pip whispered so quietly the other cubs could barely hear. Admitting fear was still difficult for them. Everyone else breathed fire last week. I cannot do it. The instructors say I will be held back a year if I fail again. Riley put her hand on his shoulder, feeling the tension in his muscles. What happens when you try? I feel the fire building in my chest, but then I think about burning something by accident, hurting someone, and the fire just stops. Fear is not your enemy, Riley said. She had learned to speak simply with them. No complex psychology terms. Fear is information. Your fear is telling you that fire is dangerous and you need to be careful. That is smart, not weak. A larger female cub named Scales spoke up. She had been silent for 2 years after her clutch sister died in a training accident. Riley had spent hours just sitting with her until she was ready to speak again. Now her voice was stronger every day. But Instructor Garrick says fear makes you hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. Garrick is not entirely wrong, Riley acknowledged. Several cubs made surprised sounds. They were not used to hearing nuance. But he is not entirely right either. Hesitation from panic is dangerous. But hesitation from caution keeps you alive. The trick is knowing the difference, she turned back to Pip. Your fear of fire is not stopping you from breathing it. Your lack of control is. You need to trust yourself. Fire is part of you. It will not hurt you if you respect it. How do I learn that? The same way you learn anything. Practice. But also by accepting that being scared is okay. You can be scared and still do the thing that scares you. That is what bravery actually is. Pip was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the center of the courtyard. The other cubs watched silently. He took several deep breaths, his small chest expanding. Riley could see him shaking, but he did not run. The fire came slowly at first, just a wisp of smoke from his nostrils. Then a flicker. Then a small but steady flame that lasted several seconds before guttering out. It was not impressive by dragon standards, but it was progress. The other cubs erupted in chirps and clicks of approval. Pip looked stunned. Riley smiled at him. See? You did not let fear stop you. You worked with it? The hour passed quickly. It always did. Riley listened to their fears, their dreams, their anger at the system that had stolen their childhoods. She did not try to fix everything. She just gave them space to feel and helped them understand that feeling was not the same as breaking. As the cubs filed back to their barracks, Wren approached. She had become Riley's liaison and monitor, the one who made sure no rules were broken. But somewhere along the way, she had also become a friend. The cubs performed better in combat drills this morning, Wren said. Their teamwork scores are the highest we have ever recorded. Good. Garrick still insists it is temporary. He says you have made them dependent on you, Riley sighed. She had heard variations of this criticism every day. What do you think? Wren was quiet for a moment, watching the cubs disappear into the fortress. I think my brother might still be alive if someone like you had been here when he was training. I think a lot of cubs might still be alive. That night, Riley was reviewing her notes when an alarm shattered the silence. She ran to her window and saw chaos in the training yard below. Instructors were shouting. Cubs were scattering. Something had gone wrong. She ran downstairs without thinking. By the time she reached the yard, a crowd had formed around one of the flight platforms. Riley pushed through and saw a cub lying motionless on the stone. It was Ridge, a mid-sized male who had been doing well in training. Blood pooled under his wing. What happened? She demanded. Advanced flight maneuver, an instructor said curtly. He attempted a combat spiral and lost control. Crashed into the platform edge. Riley knelt beside Ridge. He was breathing but unconscious. His wing was clearly broken. In the old way, the instructors would leave him to recover alone. Show no weakness, no comfort, no help, just endure. But Ridge's squad mates had not moved away. They stood in a tight group nearby, their eyes fixed on their fallen friend. One of them, a female named Frost, took a step forward. Back to your positions, Garrick ordered. Frost did not move. Is he going to be okay? That is not your concern. Return to formation. He is my squad mate. It is my concern. Another cub stepped forward, then another. Within seconds, all 8 members of Ridge's squad had broken ranks and gathered around him. They positioned themselves protectively, their wings partially spread in a defensive posture. Not aggressive, protective. Garrick's face went dark. You are all in violation of discipline code. Step back immediately or face punishment. The cubs looked at each other. Riley saw the fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else. Determination. They had learned in her sessions that bonds mattered, that protecting each other was not weakness, and now they were putting it into practice. We stay with him, Frost said quietly. Punish us if you want. But we stay. The standoff lasted several long seconds. Then Riley saw something she had never seen before. Garrick's expression flickered. Just for a moment, something that might have been approval crossed his face before the mask of discipline slammed back down. Instructor Wren, he said finally. Take Ridge to the medical wing. His squad may accompany him, but if their training scores drop, they will all repeat this cycle. Understood? Yes, sir. Wren moved quickly to lift Ridge carefully. The squad formed around her like an honor guard. As they passed Garrick, he spoke again. What you did was against protocol. It was also what real warriors do for their own. Remember both things. The cubs paused, startled. Then they continued on. Riley watched them go, her heart full. These children had just learned that following their hearts did not mean abandoning discipline. It meant knowing when discipline should serve compassion instead of crushing it. Garrick turned to Riley. For once, his hostility had dimmed slightly. Do not look so smug. This changes nothing. It changes everything, Riley said. Those cubs just proved they can be both disciplined and caring. They did not fall apart. They came together. One incident does not prove a pattern. Then watch them. Really watch them. See how much stronger they are when they are allowed to be whole. Garrick stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away without another word. But Riley noticed something. His shoulders were not quite as rigid as before, and when he passed a pair of young cubs standing nervous watch, he put his hand briefly on one's shoulder, just for a second, just enough to offer comfort. It was the first time Riley had seen him touch a cub in any way other than correction. The next morning, word spread through the academy about what Ridge's squad had done. Cubs whispered about it in the corridors. Instructors debated it in their meetings. Some called it a breakdown of order. Others called it evolution. Riley knew it was neither. It was just the beginning of something that should have happened centuries ago. Dragons learning that the heart and the blade could exist in the same hand. That warriors fought better when they had something to fight for beyond mere survival. That strength without compassion was not strength at all. Just hardness. And hardness, when struck too many times, eventually shattered. She had 3 more weeks to prove it. 3 weeks before the high generals arrived to judge whether this experiment would continue or be erased forever. She intended to make them count. The transport ships descended through the atmosphere like falling stars. Riley watched from the academy walls as 5 vessels bearing the insignia of the Dragon High Command settled onto the landing platforms. Her mouth was dry. Her hands were steady, though. After 6 weeks with the cubs, she had learned to control her fear even when she felt it intensely. "They are here," Wren said beside her. The younger instructor looked nervous. She had staked her reputation on supporting Riley's work. If this went badly, her career was over. "We will be fine," Riley said with more confidence than she felt. "The cubs have worked hard. They will show the generals what they have learned. Commander Thrace is leading the delegation." Wren's voice dropped. She lost her son to the emptiness 5 years ago. She blames emotional weakness. If anyone will oppose your methods, it will be her. Riley had read Thrace's file. The commander was legendary for her military victories, and equally legendary for her harsh discipline. She had written papers arguing that dragon culture had become too soft, that they needed to return to even stricter training protocols. Having her lead this inspection was the worst possible scenario. The generals emerged from their ships in full ceremonial armor. They were impressive and terrifying. These were dragons who had fought wars, commanded fleets, and broken planets. They moved with absolute confidence and barely contained violence. This was their culture, their way, and Riley was asking them to change it. Elder Sira met them formally in the main hall. Riley stood to the side with the instructors, trying to be invisible. But Thrace's eyes found her immediately. The commander stared at her with cold assessment, then turned away without acknowledgement. It was not hostile. It was worse. It was dismissive. Riley was beneath notice. The inspection began with standard protocols. The generals observed morning drills. The cubs performed flawlessly, moving through combat sequences with practiced precision. But Riley saw what the generals might miss. The cubs were not just following orders mechanically. They moved together with genuine coordination, anticipating each other's movements, covering weaknesses instinctively. They were a real team now, not just individuals forced into formation. Thrace noticed too. Her eyes narrowed. "Their synchronization is unusual. Explain." Garrick stepped forward. Riley waited for him to credit the cubs alone, to minimize her influence. Instead, he surprised her. "They have learned to trust each other," he said. "Trust comes from connection. We have allowed more connection. Connection is vulnerability. Sometimes, but it can also be strength. A warrior who trusts their squad fights better than one who stands alone." Thrace said nothing. She made a note on her data pad and moved on. The inspection continued through the day. Combat trials, flight tests, fire-breathing demonstrations, strategy assessments. The cubs excelled at everything. But Riley could see the generals were not impressed. Excellence was expected. They were looking for weaknesses, for proof that emotion had made the cubs soft. That evening, Riley was summoned to present her findings to the generals directly. She stood in the same council chamber where she had faced the instructors 6 weeks ago. But this audience was far more intimidating. She showed them everything. The biological data, the psychological assessments, comparison metrics showing that the cubs were performing better than any cohort in recent history. Retention rates, mental health indicators, teamwork scores. Every number supported her case. Thrace listened with her arms crossed. When Riley finished, the commander stood. "Your data is impressive," she said, "but data can be manipulated. Numbers can lie. I want to see the truth beneath the statistics. I want to test these cubs myself." Riley's stomach dropped. "What kind of test?" "The fire gauntlet." Murmurs ran through the instructors. "It is normally reserved for cubs in their final year. A combat trial with real danger. If your methods have made them stronger, they will pass. If you have made them weak, they will fail, and fail badly." "They are not ready," Wren protested. "The gauntlet has a 30% casualty rate even for senior cubs. Then perhaps we should not have wasted their training time on feelings and comfort." Thrace's voice was hard. "The trial will be held tomorrow at dawn. Prepare them." Riley met with the cubs that night. They gathered in the courtyard, all 300 of them. The younger ones looked scared. The older ones tried to hide it. She sat among them and spoke simply. "The generals want to test you tomorrow. It will be hard. Maybe the hardest thing you have ever done. They are hoping you fail because that will prove I was wrong to teach you that emotions are not weakness." "What if we do fail?" Pip asked. He had grown braver, but was still the smallest and most vulnerable. "Then you fail. But you will fail together, and you will know you tried." Riley looked around at all of them. "But I do not think you will fail. I think you will show them something they have forgotten. That warriors who care for each other are stronger than warriors who stand alone." Scales raised her wing. "What if someone gets hurt? Do we leave them behind like the old way? Or do we help?" It was the question that cut to the heart of everything. Riley thought carefully before answering. "You do what warriors do. You complete the mission. But you do not abandon your own. Find a way to do both." The cubs looked at each other. Silent communication passed between them. Then Frost, who had stood up for Ridge, spoke for all of them. "We will run the gauntlet. We will pass it. And we will do it together." Dawn came too quickly. The fire gauntlet was set up in the volcanic canyon behind the academy. Riley stood with the instructors and generals on an observation platform, while the cubs gathered at the starting line. 30 cubs had volunteered for the trial, a full squad. The rest watched from the sidelines, their support silent but fierce. The gauntlet was a nightmare course. Walls of fire that shifted patterns, chasms that required perfect timing to cross, combat drones that fired stunning shots, obstacles designed to separate cubs to force them to choose between self-preservation and helping others. It was built to teach a brutal lesson. In war, sometimes you have to let people fall. The horn sounded. The cubs launched forward. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, splitting and reforming seamlessly. When firewalls rose, they created thermal shields together, combining their powers in ways Riley had not seen before. When chasms opened, they did not all try to cross at once. The stronger flyers carried the weaker ones. No one was left behind. Halfway through the course, the trap sprang. A section of the path collapsed and Fleet, one of the mid-sized cubs, fell into a pit surrounded by rising flames. The old training said leave him, complete the mission. One casualty was acceptable. The cubs stopped. All of them. "No," Thrace breathed beside Riley. "Do not stop. Do not throw away the mission for one soldier." But the cubs were not throwing anything away. They were calculating. Frost directed half the team to continue forward, maintaining mission progress. The other half worked together to create a thermal corridor through the flames. 2 strong flyers dove into the pit. They grabbed Fleet and hauled him up while the others maintained the shield. It cost them time. It could have cost them the mission. But they made up the time by moving faster, working smarter, trusting each other completely. Fleet, shaken but unharmed, flew stronger than before because his team had not abandoned him. They crossed the finish line together. Not the fastest time ever recorded, but every single cub completed the gauntlet. 0 casualties. That had never happened before in the history of the trial. Silence filled the observation platform. The general stared at the cubs, who stood panting but triumphant. Thrace's face was unreadable. Then she climbed down from the platform and walked to where the cubs stood. She stopped in front of Fleet, the cub who had fallen. "Why did you stop?" she asked him. "The mission was more important than one soldier. You know this." Fleet looked up at the legendary commander without flinching. "We did not stop the mission, Commander." Half of us continued forward. But we also did not leave our squad mate, because that is what warriors do. We protect our own. And if protecting him had caused you to fail completely, then we would have failed together. But we did not think we would fail. We trusted each other. Thrace was quiet for a long time. Then she did something no one expected. She knelt down so she was at eye level with the young cub. My son was in a training exercise like this, she said. Her voice was rough. He fell. His squad mates left him because that was protocol. He died alone in that pit because he would not call for help, because asking for help was weakness. Her eyes filled with tears. I blamed him. I blamed his emotion. But really he died because we taught him that connection was vulnerability instead of strength. She stood and looked at all 30 cubs. You did not fail today. We failed you. We failed generations of cubs by teaching you to be strong alone instead of strong together. She turned to Riley. Dr. Foster, your experiment is not an experiment anymore. It is the future. The celebration lasted exactly 20 minutes. The cubs were congratulating each other. The instructors were reassessing everything they thought they knew, and the generals were deep in discussion about implementing these methods across all academies. Riley stood apart, exhausted but satisfied. They had done it. They had proven that emotion and discipline could coexist. Then the alarm screamed through the academy. Everyone froze. That particular siren meant only one thing: an active distress call from nearby space. Riley followed the rush of dragons to the command center, a room carved into the mountain peak with views of the stars above. Admiral Syra was already at the communications console, her face grim. The main display showed a ship tumbling through space, atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches. Raiders surrounded it like predators circling wounded prey. Human colony ship, Syra reported. The Bright Hope carrying 3,000 passengers. 2,000 of them are children being relocated from an overcrowded station. 6 raider vessels are tearing them apart. Riley's blood went cold. She moved closer to the display. The ship was civilian, almost no weapons. The raiders were taking their time, cutting through sections methodically. They were not just stealing. They were hunting. Response time for human military? Thrace demanded. 38 hours at best speed, Syra said. The nearest human fleet is across the sector. Dragon military? We have a battle group 12 hours away. But by then everyone on that ship will be dead. Thrace's claws dug into the console. We cannot reach them in time. Riley stared at the ship, her mind racing. 3,000 humans, 2,000 children, the same age as the cubs she had been working with. Scared, alone, about to die in the cold of space. How far are we? She asked. 2 hours, Syra said. But this is a training academy. We have no warships here. Just transports, you have us, the voice came from behind. Riley turned to see Frost standing in the doorway. Behind her, the 30 cubs who had just completed the gauntlet. Behind them, hundreds more. Every cub in the academy had followed them to the command center. Absolutely not, Garrick said immediately. You are children. Trained children, but still children. Those are hardened raiders. Those are children dying out there, Pip said. His voice was small but steady. We can reach them. We are fast, and there are 300 of us. You could all die, Thrace said bluntly. This is not training. This is real combat. Then it is a good thing you just tested us and we passed. Scales stepped forward. We are warriors. Maybe not finished ones, but warriors still. And warriors protect people who cannot protect themselves. You taught us that. Riley felt her heart being pulled in 2 directions. These were children. She had spent weeks helping them learn to feel, to connect, to be more than weapons. And now they wanted to fly into combat? To risk everything? But they were also right. 3,000 humans were going to die. 2,000 children. And the cubs were the only ones close enough to help. She turned to Thrace. If they volunteer, can they do this? This is insane, an instructor protested. We will be sending cubs against killers. It goes against every protocol. Protocol says let 3,000 innocents die because help is not quite ready yet? Wren asked. Then maybe protocol is wrong. Thrace looked at the cubs, then at the dying ship on the display. Riley saw the war on her face. The commander who had lost her son. The warrior who knew what duty demanded. The dragon who had just admitted that the old ways had failed. If you do this, Thrace said slowly, you follow my orders without question. You stay in formation. You do not break discipline no matter what happens. And if I order a retreat, you retreat immediately. Understood? Yes, Commander, 300 voices said as one. Then get to the transports. We leave in 10 minutes. The next 10 minutes were controlled chaos. Cubs suited up in light combat gear. The Academy's transport ships, designed for supply runs, were hastily retrofitted with what weapons they had. It was not enough. Not nearly enough. But it was what they had. Riley found herself assigned to one of the transports with Garrick, Wren, and 50 Cubs. Thrace commanded from the lead ship. As they launched into space, Riley looked at the Cubs around her. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes. But they were also determined. Dr. Foster? Pip was pressed against her side, his small body trembling. Will we be brave enough? You already are brave, Riley said. Brave is not the same as not scared. Brave is being scared and doing it anyway. The 2-hour flight felt both too long and too short. They spent it planning. Thrace's voice came through the communications, calm and professional. She divided the Cubs into squads, assigned roles, ran through scenarios. She treated them like real warriors because they were about to face a real battle. As they approached the Bright Hope, the scope of the disaster became clear. The colony ship was dying. Whole sections were open to space. The raiders were boarding through the breaches, hunting through the corridors. Riley could see escape pods drifting, some intact, some destroyed by raider fire. Listen to me carefully. Thrace's voice cut through the channel. Our mission is rescue, not revenge. We save as many humans as possible. We do not engage the raiders unless necessary. Speed and precision. Get in, get people to the escape pods, get out. Understood? Understood, Commander. Raiders are detecting us. They are turning to engage. All squads, defensive formation. The raider ships were brutal, ugly things designed for piracy and murder. They opened fire immediately. The transport scattered, their shields flaring under the barrage. The Cubs launched from the transport bays, 300 young dragons spilling into the void. Riley had never seen dragons fight in space before. They moved like dancers, their wings useless but their bodies agile in zero gravity. Fire breath did not work without atmosphere, but they had other weapons. Claws, tails, determination. Squad 1, you have the port breach. Squad 2, starboard. Squad 3, aft section. Thrace coordinated like a conductor leading an orchestra. The Cubs moved to their assignments while fighting groups engaged the raiders, buying time. Riley's transport docked against an intact airlock. The Cubs poured through, Garrick leading them. Riley followed with emergency supplies. Inside the ship, the scene was chaos. Humans running, screaming, dying, raiders hunting them with cold efficiency. Frost's squad hit the raiders from behind. The pirates were expecting weak prey, not trained dragon cubs attacking in coordinated strikes. The raiders fell back, confused. It gave the humans time to run. This way, Riley shouted, guiding them toward the escape route. Follow me! Dozens of humans flooded past her. Parents carrying children, elderly moving as fast as they could, station workers trying to help everyone at once. The Cubs held the line, keeping the raiders back. Then Pip screamed. Riley spun and saw a raider twice his size closing in on a human child, frozen in fear. Pip put himself between them without hesitation. The raider's weapon came up. Pip took the blast meant for the child. Everything seemed to slow down. The small cub fell. The child screamed. And something broke loose in every cub who saw it. They stopped following orders. They stopped holding position. They saw their friend, their squad mate, the smallest and bravest of them, lying hurt, and they responded not with cold discipline but with furious love. The raiders had expected robots. They got warriors who cared. The raider who shot Pip did not get a chance to fire again. Scales hit him from the side with enough force to crack his armor. Fleet and Ridge attacked in perfect synchronization from above and below. The other cubs surged forward, their movements precise but powered by something the raiders had never faced before. Dragons who fought not just from discipline but from love. Riley ran to Pip. The blast had caught him in the shoulder, burning through scales to the flesh beneath. He was conscious but in obvious pain. The human child he had saved was crying beside him. I am okay, Pip managed. Get them out. Not without you. Riley grabbed him carefully, supporting his weight. Frost appeared beside her. I have him. You guide the humans. Frost lifted the small cub gently. Come on, brave one. Let us get you safe. The battle turned quickly after that. The raiders were professionals, but they fought for profit. The cubs fought for something deeper. When the raiders saw 300 young dragons moving as one unified force, protecting each other while systematically dismantling their attack, they broke. Pirates did not get paid enough to face that kind of opposition. The raider ships disengaged and fled into deep space. Thrace did not pursue. The mission was rescue, and rescue they did. Squad by squad, the Cubs evacuated humans from the dying colony ship. They carried children on their backs. They guided elderly through corridors filled with smoke. They went back into dangerous sections again and again until every single human was accounted for. By the time human military ships arrived 6 hours later, the Bright Hope was empty. 3,000 humans floated in escape pods or sat in the transport ships, scared but alive. Every single one had been saved. The only casualties were 3 Cubs with minor injuries, including Pip. Riley sat in the medical bay watching the medic work on Pip's shoulder. The small cub was trying to be brave, but tears leaked from his eyes. The human child he had saved sat beside him, holding his claw carefully. "You saved me," the child whispered. She was maybe 6 years old with dark hair and huge eyes. "The bad man was going to hurt me and you stopped him." "That is what warriors do," Pip said. Then he looked at Riley. "Right? We protect people?" "You absolutely do." Riley's voice was thick. "You were so brave, Pip. I'm so proud of you." Thrace entered the medical bay. The commander looked exhausted, but something in her face had changed. She knelt beside Pip. "How are you feeling, Cub?" "It hurts, but I am okay." "Is everyone safe?" "Everyone. Because of you and your squad mates." Thrace looked at Riley, then back at Pip. "I need to tell you something. When my son died, I blamed his emotional nature. I thought if he had been harder, colder, more disciplined, he would have survived. But today I watched 300 Cubs fight with both discipline and heart. I watched them protect each other. I watched you sacrifice yourself for a child you did not know. And I finally understand what I could not see before." "What is that, Commander?" "That my son did not die because he felt too much. He died because we taught him to feel nothing. We trained the heart out of him until he could not recognize when he needed help or how to ask for it. We thought we were making him strong, but we were actually breaking him." Thrace's voice cracked. "You showed me something today. All of you did. Warriors do not fight best when they feel nothing. They fight best when they have something to fight for." Pip reached out with his good arm and touched Thrace's hand. The old commander, who had fought in a dozen wars and never shown weakness, started crying. She cried for her son, for all the Cubs lost to the emptiness, for the centuries of damage done in the name of strength. Riley stood and quietly left them alone. She found the other Cubs gathered in the main bay of the transport, surrounded by humans thanking them. Human children were curled up against dragon cubs. Human parents were shaking claws and patting scales. The two species were tangled together in exhaustion and relief. Garrick stood at the edge watching it all. Riley joined him. "I was wrong about you," he said without preamble. "I thought you would make them weak. I fought against everything you tried to teach. But today those Cubs performed better than warriors twice their age. Not despite their emotions, but because of them. They fought with precision and passion. They worked as a perfect unit because they genuinely cared for each other, and they were willing to die to protect complete strangers." "You helped make them that way too," Riley said. "The discipline, the training, the skills. I just gave them permission to care while using those skills. We did this together." "Perhaps." Garrick watched as Scales let a human toddler climb on her back. "I think about all the Cubs I trained over the years. How many I broke trying to forge them into weapons. How many became hollow. I cannot undo that damage. But maybe I can stop creating more of it." 3 days later, an emergency session of the Galactic Council convened. Riley stood before representatives of 100 species, with Thrace and the Cubs beside her. The human ambassador looked both proud and overwhelmed. The dragon delegation looked transformed. Thrace presented their findings: the biological connection between humans and dragons, the improved performance metrics, the successful combat operation, the unanimous recommendation from all 5 generals that human liaisons be integrated into every dragon training facility across their empire. "But this is more than just about training," Thrace said. "This is about remembering what we lost when we chose discipline over connection." The human Dr. Foster did not make our Cubs weak. She made them whole, and whole warriors are stronger than broken ones. The proposal passed with overwhelming support. Riley was offered the position of Chief of Dragon Human Integration, coordinating the placement of human caregivers throughout the Dragon military education system. She accepted immediately. 1 year later, Riley stood in a different academy on a different world, watching a new group of dragon cubs see their first human. The instructors had learned from the Crimson Spire experience. They knew what would happen. The cubs broke formation and ran straight to her, but this time no one was surprised. No one called it a failure of discipline. The instructors simply smiled and gave the cubs their time. Because they had learned what the Crimson Spire proved, that some bonds transcended species, that some connections were written in biology and spirit both. That true strength came not from denying emotion, but from integrating it with skill. Riley knelt and let the cubs swarm her, their chirps filling the air. She touched each one, learning their names, beginning the process of helping them remember that warriors could have hearts. Behind her, the instructors watched. Some of them were veterans of the old system, learning new ways. Some were young, embracing the change eagerly. All of them understood now what had taken 10,000 years to remember, that they were not just building weapons. They were raising warriors, and warriors needed something to fight for beyond mere survival. Across the galaxy, in academy after academy, human voices spoke gently to dragon cubs. Human hands offered comfort after hard training. Human hearts helped heal the wounds that discipline alone had created. And slowly, generation by generation, the dragons were becoming what they were always meant to be. Strong and skilled and disciplined, yes, but also connected, caring, and whole. Somewhere in the Crimson Spire Academy, Pip was training with his cohort. His shoulder had healed completely. The human child he saved sent him messages every week, pictures of her life on the new colony. He kept them all. Garrick pretended not to notice, but Riley knew he had started keeping his daughter's messages too. Scales was learning to sing again, teaching the old dragon songs to younger cubs, songs that had been forbidden for generations, songs about family and home and love. The instructors no longer stopped her. Fleet, Ridge, and Frost had formed an unbreakable squad. They trained harder than anyone, but they also laughed together, ate together, and looked after each other. They would graduate in 5 more years as some of the finest warriors their species had ever produced, not because they had no emotion, but because they had learned to channel it into purpose. And Thrace visited the academy regularly, not as a fearsome commander, but as someone trying to heal old wounds. She spoke to the cubs about her son, about mistakes made, about the importance of asking for help. She made sure they knew that strength was not the absence of weakness, but the courage to be vulnerable when necessary. Riley stood in the courtyard of the new academy, surrounded by chirping cubs, and felt something settle in her chest. Peace, purpose, the knowledge that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. A young instructor approached, a dragon barely old enough to have completed training herself. "Dr. Foster, some of the cubs are having trouble with the fire trials. They are scared. Can you help?" "Of course," Riley smiled. "Being scared is okay. Let us teach them that fear is information, not failure." She walked toward the training grounds with cubs flowing around her like water. Above, both suns were setting, casting long shadows. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more cubs to help, more bridges to build between dragon tradition and human warmth. But today, 3,000 humans were alive because cubs had learned that warriors could have hearts. Today, dragon children across the galaxy were learning to feel without breaking. Today, 2 species were finding in each other what they had each been missing, and it had all started with one moment. One human joining training, and every dragon cub breaking formation to run straight to her, not because she made them weak, but because she helped them remember how to be strong.